what sort of is the story of ForgeFlow in your perspective?
Okay.
Where did it come from?
So, and I think I've repeated this a number of times to a number of different people, and basically it was a tool initially just to help myself with my job. So, as a developer, there's certain aspects of the Autodesk infrastructure that require extra clicks to get to, and they're not so accessible, even via the UIs. So Fusion 360 Manage, just getting DMS IDs from an item, the actual unique ID associated with it is not as straightforward as it should be. And when you need it as a reference point and you just need to grab it real quick and it's hard to get to, it slows down stuff. So I think originally built as kind of a development aid and tool, and also to exercise the Forge capabilities, because I mean that's the kind of the backbone that all the Autodesk products live on. So that's like the initial point of it. So it did kind of branch off. I mean, we developed our own kind of IP around the what we're calling the D3 libs, which is kind of our Forge SDK, if you will, and so that ends up now powering ForgeFlow, but it's a single code base that can power other solutions that we build as well. So we get to eat our own dog food in every way possible with that. But so and then after kind of having that tool set, I think it was just just obvious that it could be used by our team to help our own clients, and so kind of built out a little framework around it, and let our team start playing with it. And then I think we saw what happened. It kind of increased our effectiveness pretty substantially, saved a lot of people some time, and so I mean the next step is to let the world use it.
Yeah.
So I don't, I guess that's how I see the kind of the story. Started out as like a development tool and then became so useful.
Yeah, I've definitely, I've seen that happen. I mean, and it's interesting to me sort of how much it sort of took off within our team, and so quickly, right? I mean, initially, did you see it being adopted even by our internal team?
That's a good question. I guess I saw it more as a tool for our development team.
Yeah.
Moving forward, right? And while we're not a huge team, I mean, it's nice to be able to kind of have a consistent code base and conventions that you can all follow. And so I guess it became obvious at some point. It became very obvious. But I guess I don't think I had that like set in my mind to begin with.
Yeah. Why do you think it was adopted? Why do you think it did take off?
Oh, because it was useful.
Yeah, I know.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, we didn't have to force adoption, on it, because it actually was directly relevant to their job and allowed them to complete tasks faster.
Yeah. I mean, is there any particular killer, feature, killer thing that you thought, oh, this is the big thing that immediately makes it valuable?
The bulk running of scripts, I think, is the one that, kind of made our team adopt it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, obviously there's times when you've got thousands of items in a Fusion 360 Managed workspace that need to change, and there's no real kind of mechanism to do that in bulk. And so we allow them to create a view, that filters all the items they want to act on and then run that script on it. And I think that is probably, do you have a different opinion on a tool? I think that is probably the one.
I think that one is probably the most powerful.
And it drove the adoption, I think.
At the time, right? Because, we're dealing with clients that needed to manipulate a lot of data and very quickly. And there were some other tools out there that allowed you to do that. In fact, you can, had been supporting sort of an Excel tool that was doing that, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, it was actually a combination of things. The limitations in terms of performance of that Excel tool, where was sort of the only other option for something that was, powerfully able to achieve the same result.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of how slow that thing was, or not reliable. So kind of putting, powerful tools in the cloud.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, we chose to start it in the cloud.
Yeah.
And I think that does make all the difference, because now we've got a scalable infrastructure that doesn't rely on these client machines doing the work.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, absolutely. No, I agree.
So seeing that, how sort of successful, and powerful that is, because it really takes all of the work, off of the user, off of their machine, and kind of removes any kind of bad user experience and gets that out of the way. That was, I think, one piece. And then the other piece is timing, right? There was, this was coming out right when Autodesk was also changing their authentication.
That's right.
And so some of the sort of freeware, some of the open source tool sets that existed, they're not, they weren't.
Which were already complicated to configure.
Which were already,
not so much complicated, but tedious,
to work
I guess.
with in general, right? But they're better than not having something. But they were clunky, also, client based and stuff like that. But the fact that the authentication was changing, Autodesk was becoming more secure, and there needed to be, and basically nobody was going to go back and alter those older tool sets, right? Because they weren't supported in the first place.
Right.
I think all three of those things, like all of a sudden, just like, there's no way that, why would you do anything else basically after that?
Right.
What, I guess, looking back over, sort of where it is now, is there anything that surprises you about sort of what you were thinking about it then compared to where it is now?
I think that once it was adopted by the team, I really did have the vision for it to expand into all the other Forge services.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we're going. I think what surprised me is all of the kind of the new things that I ended up learning to build some of these things. So we're offering some things that are in beta right now, but we're offering some pretty incredible kind of integration and webhook, using the webhooks from within Forge and external ones that I think kind of expand it past where I thought it could go. I know we really wanted to focus on dedicated to the Forge and Autodesk infrastructure, but guess what? Hooks and notifications can come from elsewhere, and so that is one. But some of the newer stuff coming out around the, being able to run C# code and PowerShell scripts and things on items within the Forge data management systems and within Fusion 360 Manage is awesome, and it's given our dev team a little kind of skill stack boost too, because we've got into the lower level stuff, which is can be scary sometimes, but we've had a lot of success with it. So
yeah, I'm definitely surprised by how quickly a lot of it's been able to evolve, and yeah, I agree. The stuff with webhooks, it's like one of those areas where you might think that it doesn't need as much attention. It's fairly technical and those kinds of things, but it's one of my favorite pieces.
Me too.
Just be able to go and manage some of the webhooks. It's just like
just to manage them and just wait for this for all this interaction with webhooks. It's so awesome.
So that was actually kind of going into my next question, like what are you excited about for the future of ForgeFlow besides basically webhooks? Is there anything else?
I think that there's a constant need. I don't see any way for this project to kind of get stalled or hung up. There's a constant need to, I won't say fill gaps, although that's one of the things that we do, but to kind of serve clients' unique asks, based on these Autodesk products, and then either folding that into ForgeFlow or building it in there and offering it to the client that way. A lot of kind of just aggregated data stuff, so we've all of these different projects outside of Fusion 360 Manage, BIM and ACC, all this project management stuff is really can use some of this gap filling and some of this aggregate operations that go cross projects.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge connector, right? The opportunity for it to bring together different sources of data and sort of span across different solutions and easily tie things together, where before it was like, you can integrate some things, but it's always
I think that is going to be the key, because I think webhooks has had a slow adoption just in general, right? They're hard to not necessarily know how to create. You seem to have a developer to handle them and use them, or use maybe some third-party service, and so it's not a real clear kind of path forward for a lot of people when they just see webhooks. And so to be able to offer a UI that makes it easy, and then able to act on them easy, I think will kind of drive that webhook adoption up as well. And then it'll allow our solution architects and any other company that uses ForgeFlow, any of their architects, to kind of think in an event-driven way, as opposed to, the old school, I call polling way, which a lot of people still live there,
Right.
And so we are we have the capability to expose events as they happen, and let's drive that adoption through ForgeFlow.
Yeah, I'm seeing that already as well. Even in some of the client projects that that we're doing, where we're using ForgeFlow to configure a long list of events. And so I do think one of the cool things about ForgeFlow is that it is really able to be widely adopted, scaled out, and used by not only our internal team, not only developers, but the clients as well. And so that's been for me a cool thing to see, that people can subscribe to ForgeFlow and set this stuff up for themselves and get pretty immediate value. And at the same time, if that isn't happening for one customer or another, our internal team jumps in there and can use it to provide much faster service, right?
Yep.
And so anyways, I'm super excited about all the stuff that I'm seeing there. I guess I want to close it out and ask one last question on it. So if you're either learning about Forge development, or you're a client of Fusion 360 Manage, or you're not, I guess what do you want people to know about ForgeFlow, right? To sort of get them to consider either learning more about it, subscribing to it, anything like that.
So if it were a client that is, wanting to use Forge in some of their processes and not sure how to go about doing it, I think ForgeFlow would kind of make that path clearer. As for kind of learning, a really good place to see what ForgeFlow is doing under the covers is to look at the documentation at developer.autodesk.com, and it's wide ranging and goes over a lot of different APIs, and we intend on exercising all of them, and we've already got a big chunk of them under the belt. But the Fusion 360 Manage v3 API, the Forge Data Management APIs, the Forge Webhook APIs are all available for clients and everyone to see. We when we're developing, and I always suggest people that are getting into Forge design to utilize some HTTP client testing suite, something like Postman, where you can put these endpoints in and test them. And ForgeFlow really is the kind of taking all of those and unifying them and making them easily accessible. But none of it's hidden. What ForgeFlow is doing is generally what is exposed through all the other Autodesk services. You generally just need a developer to access them. So,
yeah.
Does that answer that at all?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It definitely speaks to me. Like, especially the journey that I'm on now with this 100 Days of Forge thing, right? My motivation was to be able to, understand what are all those services that, exist and what are they capable of, because I'm trying to drive a product like ForgeFlow is difficult. It's expansive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's, definitely good advice. You wanted to dig in to the documentation, understand what's there, not necessarily having to develop everything from scratch, but understanding that the intent of ForgeFlow is to be sort of the single easiest way to leverage all of those APIs and all those services. That being familiar with what can take place with it can really influence how you can take advantage of ForgeFlow, right?
Couldn't have said it better.